For those of you in marketing, this may not be a pleasant message for you to hear, and you may not be aware of this, but you may be. I know that in my organization and in a lot of the organizations of the folks that I mentor, so I mentor a lot of technical communicators, folks typically writing technical product information, we feel like the marketing team isn't listening, that there's kind of a gap. And I call it the buy gap, right? So there's all kinds of awesome stuff going on before the sale, and there's all kinds of awesome stuff going on after the sale, and there's no handoff, there's no consistent journey. Now, clearly that's not true, because at least 3 people, 4 people, 5 people who raised their hand are here, and it sounds like at least a few of you are looking at things across the portfolio, across the enterprise, across the journey. That's fantastic. So let me find out, from a marketing perspective, are any of you guys looking at things like passed by? A few of you. Okay, awesome. Okay, good. Well, we're all friends here. Doesn't matter if you have not done that already. Let's talk about why you should be doing that if you're not, and why that's really important. And for my friend in customer experience, client experience, you can take a nap if you want to, because clearly you already get it. Before I go there, let me just tell you. There we go. Let me just tell you a little bit about me. As Yael said, I'm a content strategist at IBM, and my focus is on content experience. And I am in an enterprise-wide role, although for the last almost a year now, I've essentially been an internal consultant. So I work with the product teams and try to help them leverage our enterprise-wide strategy and actually do that for real and apply that on their products. And often, I don't know, how many of you work in a big enterprise, like a big, yeah. And do you get stuff handed down from on high? The corporate people say, thou shalt do it this way or that way, and you look at it and say, how the heck do I even begin to apply this, right? So my team, we try to help the product teams actually apply that content strategy. And we do education, and we also do essentially embedded on the product team kind of consulting. And so one of the things that I see all the time is this lack of communication across marketing. You can call it pre-sales and post-sales. You can call it marketing and technical. In my mind, I hate talking about it that way, because I see one thing, right? I see one nice continuous journey, and we're just not implementing it that way, right? So when I say technical content, I have lots of people say, but technical content is used, pre-sales. Yes, it is. But not everybody is leveraging that, right? Or taking advantage of it. So that's what we're going to talk about today, because that's my hobby horse at IBM, and with my mentees. So I'm going to tell you a little story, and we're going to talk about a few truths about content that will come out of that story. And then I'm going to talk about unified content strategy and what I mean by that, and how I think I can impart to you some lessons and some tips from my crazy tales of in the trenches. So once upon a time, and I see my colleague James Mathewson just walked in, and so he can correct me if I get any of the dates wrong. I'm going to say it was probably 8 years ago, 9 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. Everybody sells became a huge mantra in IBM. And I think that what's interesting about that is, I think probably today we all think, yes, of course, everybody sells. Especially when we do content marketing, we think about our SMEs and thought leadership and so on, and how that is, in fact, selling. But at the time, the folks I was working with, who were looking at dry product documentation, they were saying, holy crap, what does this mean to us? How do we have an impact? How do we sell? We don't sell. Do we sell? I mean, there were lots and lots and lots of questions around that. So our response was, I guess we better figure that out. Right? So what is the impact of product documentation? That was our original question, in the pre-sales space. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but we created a survey. We put it into our documentation infrastructure. At the time, they were called information centers. And we spent about 5 years surveying our clients. So again, this is maybe 8 years ago. So not the most recent data, but I have some more recent data that I can share. And we started just asking them some questions about, how important is high quality technical content to your purchase decisions? How important is high quality content to your perception about IBM? How important is high quality content, technical content, to your perception of the product or the quality of the product? So we're going to see some data in a minute, because in the truth, of course, I have to throw a whole bunch of data at you. Wouldn't be a good presentation if it didn't have lots of numbers in it. When we discovered that, yes, we do, in fact, there is an impact there, we started thinking about, okay, what content do we create? How do we create it? How do we deliver it? And how can we do that in a way that's actually going to have a conscious impact from a pre-sales perspective? And my team at the time, I was not in my corporate job, I was in the information management organization, and my team at the time created something that we called an evaluation guide. And what we did was, this is very old school, so if you don't like hearing about PDFs, go la, 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 because I'm going to talk about PDFs for a minute. We created this evaluation guide, and essentially what we did was we went out and we scraped the features off the features and benefits page for a product, and every feature became a section in this guide, and after the feature, we would give a little written product tour that would validate and demonstrate how that feature was actually expressed in the use of the product. And we said, when we do trials, when the sales folks or the services folks go out and they install something at a customer site, and we do trials because IBM enterprise-wide software, it's not something you would normally download and use on your own. You took some people to go and install it on site for you to do a trial. And you'd get this evaluation guide and you'd have an opportunity to walk through the product feature by feature or benefit by benefit and see if the product was really going to address the concern you had in your business, right? And so the marketing folks were trying to address the problems our customers were having and position the product to address the problems our customers were having. And all we were doing was trying to say, well, let's see, does the product actually do those things? It was quite enlightening, not always in a good way, and we learned a lot from that. But I think it was really one of the first times that we had thought about how we could create the type of content we always create, but position it, package it, skin it in a way that it would be more valuable to our customers and our sales process pre-sales. The second thing that we did was we started really looking at what we then called solution-oriented content, high-value content. And this was essentially, I'm going to put it in today's words, we weren't thinking about it this way at that time, but this is essentially something that I would say effective, high-value solution-oriented content does two things. One is it progresses the customer through the journey, and that's not how we talked about it in the past, but not just up to the point of buying, but beyond the point of buying, right? Through adopt, which for us has several sub-phases, everyday use and getting started and so on. We don't want people stuck in getting started. We want them using the product every day and not feeling like they're relearning it every day. And all the way out to advocate. So marketing folks, is customer advocacy, is that something that is a goal of yours? I mean, is that like a stated goal? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of nods. Guess who I think contributes more to customer advocacy than you? Me. So my teams fill the gap between buy and advocate. They design the product, and if they do a good job, then the product use is delightful. They create the content that supports the customer through the use of the product. That's not a marketing function, right? That's a product management, offering management, product development, whatever your company calls it. That's a post-sales function, right? And so we had a an eye-opening experience when we started thinking about how are we creating content that's actually creating advocates. Not just creating content that is, just enough for people to survive. We haven't killed anyone in the process of adopting the product. We are batting 1,000 today, right? I mean, as soon as they start becoming adversaries, what my colleague Michael Priestley says it calls adversaries. If we haven't created an adversary, we're doing good. But we really wanted to take that a step further and create advocates. And I know you guys think of advocacy as a goal of yours. Well, we started learning to adopt that idea, that we were also contributing to creating advocates. So this response, again, was, I think, a real eye-opener for a lot of people who are in the technical content community. There were a few of us who were doing what we called strategic information architecture, which is what we now in IBM call content strategy, technical content strategy. And we were like, we need to have better content. We need to address how customers are applying our products in their business and how they're successfully getting value out of those products in their business. Not type your name in the name field, right? That is not high-value content. Type your name in the name field if your product requires someone to get a help topic, to figure out how to log in. You've got a different problem altogether, right? And we didn't want to be in that space of what I call low-value content, right? We wanted to be in a higher-value content space. So as we started doing this, we, as I said, we kicked off a survey in our information centers, and we found a very high percentage of people thought that high-quality technical content was either important or very important in these 4 areas, right? I talked about them earlier. Perception of IBM as a company, just their perception of their own satisfaction with the product or the solution that they were looking at or had purchased. In some cases, we had some folks taking the survey post-purchase because, of course, it was our documentation. Their perception of the quality of the product. And I suspect that there was more, this survey was actually in our product documentation delivery infrastructure. So that certainly would color the mental state that they were in when they answered the survey. But I'm pretty sure that people were also looking at the content that's in our electronic support portal, for example. Right? So they were looking at tech support content as well. And finally, more than 87% were saying, yes, this content is important to us from an actual purchase decision perspective, right? So that was all it took for us. Yes, we're important. We're so cool. Very awesome. So we started with the evaluation guides. We started looking at creating our content in a more high-value focused way, having a better strategy that was really addressing customer pain and customer success. And we started getting great feedback. We had salespeople that were giving our evaluation guides away to people even before they were in a trial. We had salespeople pointing customers to documentation in client discussions. It's like, wow, okay, we've totally arrived. Right? That's like the debutante ball coming out for documentation when you've got salespeople providing URLs to your documentation, right? We were thrilled. So we got the insight from that survey, and then my colleague, who's no longer at IBM, Allison Riley, she did about 6 or 8 months of really in-depth research to find out, well, we know what it's like for IBM customers. What's it like across the industry? What is the use of technical content? And at the time, so again, this would now be about 4 years ago, at the time, there wasn't a lot of information out there about how technical content was being used pre-sales, right? But some of this probably looks really familiar to you. How many of your companies are going digital? Very digital focused, a few of you. How many folks are have as-a-service kinds of products? And are they subscription-based mostly? Yeah. So as we see our products moving more into an as-a-service kind of a space, as we see them becoming cloud-based, as we see the whole journey becoming more digital, We're seeing things like 55% of people looking at content as opposed to talking to humans in this sales process, right? We're seeing things like technical content generating a substantial number of leads. We're seeing things like these communities of buyers sharing content with one another, not just reviewing products and so on, but sharing links to our documentation and to other technical content and other content to help people make buying decisions. So we saw this great data and we said, yes, this is really important. So now we have to take it beyond the technical content people are sitting in a vacuum, creating our little evaluation guides and chugging along with our cool technical documentation. That's all great, but we lacked two things in particular. One is we lacked the conversation with marketing to understand how are we positioning the product in the market, how are we talking about it, what's the marketing messaging. So we're kind of on the back end thinking, we think people want to use our products this way. We think the business is probably trying to sell them this way. Let's write documentation about that. Very much in a vacuum. And the other thing we lacked was a lot of great contact with actual customers or people who were working with customers to actually deploy these products in a customer context. So these would be folks like for IBM, our global business services teams, and some of the what we call lab services teams, which are associated with the product team, but they were actually services people who would go out and install a product for you and set up a proof of concept kind of trial and that sort of thing. And we didn't often have a lot of connection with those folks. We didn't often have a lot of input from them. And we never talked to marketing. I mean, like never. It was astounding to me. In fact, if I could go to any 50 technical writers, we call them information developers, I could go to any 50 of them, and at least 45 of them would be unable to tell me who the marketing people were on their team. Wouldn't even know who they were. We have marketing? It was kind of astounding to them. Well, who do you think writes your features pages? You know, your features and benefits pages and all those lovely pages on IBM.com. Oh yeah, somebody's got to write those, huh? I thought it was a product manager. So this, to me, huge gap, huge conceptual gap, huge ecosystem gap, huge, when I say ecosystem, I mean a gap in culture.